All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Ellia and Jeff of Charming Disaster. The pair used dramatic cabaret flair and gothic humor combined with their songwriting super talents and lush interplaying vocal harmonies to tell tales that may seem disastrous, but have a sweetness and human relatability within them. And their newest album, Our Lady Radium, does just that. It focuses on Marie Curie and the Radium girls and tells the beautiful discovery of radium and the hero who Marie was, but also the darkness that it brought. And they do it in such a way where their songwriting puts you right in it. And lately I've been really diving into like the how do songs work realm. And so this was the perfect band to kind of have and to try to like understand how they write songs. And it's a really, really good record. We're going to listen to one track off it. This is The Darkened Room off Our Lady Radium.
You all can keep your moment. Here's another story you can tell.
The Darkened Room off Our Lady Radium. Charming Disaster. Yeah, right? Tight harmonies on that one. So before we get into this conversation, if you can like, rate, review the podcast on some of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests and sharing those insights with you. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jeff and Ellia of Charming Disaster. I had a 1-year-old birthday party to go to.
Understood.
Yeah. First birthday is very important.
It got rowdy. It was very dramatic. Very excited.
You made it. That's good.
You hung over?
They were. The babies were just relentless. They're falling over.
Where in Cleveland are you?
I'm in like 20 minutes away. You guys were just at Whiz Bang, right?
Yeah. We love playing Cleveland. It's like one of our favorite places to come and play. We actually just applied to the Borderlight Fringe Festival, so we're hoping to be back in July if they accept us.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. Well, I was bummed out because like me and my girlfriend were riding past Whiz Bang and we're like, what is this place? Is it a theater? Is it a? I thought it because I thought it used to be a comic shop there, and then we scheduled this with Howard, and I'm like, wait a minute, we were just trying to figure out what that place was.
Oh yeah, there's a vaudeville duo called Pinch and Squeal. They're based in Cleveland, and for a long time they've been running a series called The Whiz Bang out of like a tent, like a little circus tent. And they finally got their own theater space, which they've been talking about for a long time. Like our first Cleveland show is when we met them, which was a few years ago. And at the time they were like, oh yeah, like we're imminently going to have this theater space and it'll be perfect for like kind of cabaret, vaudeville, circus performers, which is a world that we are part of through circus and puppetry. And we're kind of adjacent to a lot of that community.
Yeah.
Partly because of the subject matter of our songs and partly just because of like who we're in a scene with in New York.
Friends.
Yeah. And anyway, it took a few years and we'd come back to Cleveland and Pinch and Squeal would be like, oh, we were so close. But then like there was this issue with the building or the landlord or whatever it was. And so they finally got it. And then it was 2020 and the pandemic started. Yeah, but they had like their official opening this past year, and we got to play there in November, which was super fun. It's like a little 50-seat house, and it's really lovely. And they've got
it is a great place.
They've got like a training space downstairs, so they have like a little circus school, and they do their own productions there, but also they host out-of-town shows.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like a really cool like space to be in, and like it's interesting. That's an interesting scene to kind of fall in because there's so many fractions of like of a music scene, right? There's the punk scene, the jam scene, and like it's like that beginning period when you're starting to like figure out what you can do and where you fall. Like, you know, like how'd you like end up? Did you guys both end up kind of in like this like circus kind of vaudeville like puppet ring separately, or like was this once you get Charming Disaster became a group? Is this where this kind of like blended to be that? Does that make sense? Like or were you?
Well, it's a little bit of both. For about 25 years, I've worked with the Bindlestiff Family Circus. first as a merch girl and then in other capacities. Like back when I was in my early 20s, I started with them, which tells you how old I am. And the Bindlestiffs were a huge influence on me as a performer. Like when I started working with them, I was not yet a performer, and it was through working with them that I realized that was kind of who I was. And it was later on that I picked up a ukulele and kind of became a musician. So I'm connected to that community through the Bindlestiffs. We actually, my first time in Cleveland was at the Beachland,
Nice.
singing merch for the Bindlestiffs back in like 2003.
Nice.
And now we've played at the Beachland, which was a nice kind of full circle. That was when we opened for Rasputina there in 2019. But we also, and Jeff, like you have your own sort of like thing.
Yeah, I've always been into like cabaret and that style of music, and juggling and I think if I could redo anything in my life, I would have probably joined the circus, and considered that as an option. My brothers and I and my sister, we all like juggle, and we've done a lot of our own like backyard acrobatics and stuff. So I'm very like circus adjacent and circus friendly to a lot of this world that we've created, and it made sense when we got together. There's two of us, we could. It really lends itself well to like a variety show
and it's kind of fun being like a slightly outlier in the circus world and also slightly an outlier in the music world. Like we have songs about circus performers and fire eaters and knife throwers, and so that makes us like a little different and also our approach is very vaudevillian, like theatrical. Like we're not just like a band playing on stage, we're like really hamming it up.
We're hamming it up instead of like crying our feelings out in front of everybody.
It's very presentational and very interactive when we're performing. So also it's fun to be in the circus world and like to be slightly like outside of that. So like we've gotten to perform in puppet shows. Like we're not puppets, we're not a puppet show, but we've performed in like multiple puppet shows. And we got to MC a fire show at Coney Island a couple of years ago, which was really fun.
So fun
because we were like, okay, we're gonna come up with some really stupid fire tricks. We toasted a marshmallow on stage with a creme brulee torch, for instance.
That was the level of the fire artistry we were working with.
And then people are doing like real fire stuff. That was very impressive. We were like, okay, you guys, we have something amazing.
That's awesome. The beautiful thing about the idea of like the circus, there's these different talents and everyone has like their own unique thing to bring to the show. And you know what I mean? It's not like, not necessarily, you don't have to be able to do what I can do, but you have your own thing. And like, it's interesting because there's just this atmospheric thing that comes with it. There's a mood that comes with that music and with that, like, maybe it's because it's like coming from like an older, like a time period before where it's like so kind of like in a way like atmospheric or like sets the tone of a thing. Like if you dress like you're a circus performer, someone can lay, that's that, or someone was like a medieval, there's like a time era, subscribed to it. But the vaudevillian thing is definitely like to amplify yourself more than just like musically to be emotive, to do it full force and full like bodily to convey yourself in that way is like a whole nother like level. And like vaudeville performers who would like when you go in those old vaudeville like theaters, like there's no mics, you know what I mean? You have to be that expressive and that loud in a way. Like it's definitely an admirable, I can talk today, field and like way to like learn how to express. And like, that's why I was just curious on how that evolved with you guys, because musically, like I've been diving through all the records and like the songwriting is incredible and how you two play off each other. And like, there's like, it's just perfect how your voices interline with each other. And like, so like that whole like vaudevillian, like circus, like other emotive thing is super cool because it just amplifies that even more. That being said, I wanted to ask how the the Vanguard's doing.
The Vanguard?
Yeah,
Sorry, wait. Can you repeat that? You cut out for just a second.
I wanted to ask how the Vanguard, the garden in the van, is doing.
Our
Car garden.
Car
Car
garden.
garden. Yeah, we were confused because like it's never been a van. It's always been like my parents' station wagon.
But yeah, it's on hold now.
Yeah,
Is
it's winter. Yeah,
it's
winter.
winter.
Although along those lines, there was not too long ago we had played a show somewhere, and the next show we were staying with my parents because like we were gonna play a show near where they live, and at the previous stop somebody had given us a bunch of like herbs from their garden.
Yeah.
And we had it like sticking out of like one of the vents. And we pull up, and my dad's in the driveway, and he looks in the car, and he says, without skipping a beat, "What is that, wolfsbane?"
That's awesome. Well, that goes to the other PSA of how to handle, like, wolf bites and scarab bites was the thing. I was alarmed. There's no cure for that.
That's right.
Yeah,
sure. You've been doing your homework, it seems.
Yeah, you're doing a deep dive. Did you? I don't know if you've seen the winter survival one. That's one of my favorites.
It's very perfect.
That's awesome. It's fun. Like I don't know, things like that I think like as a band, like there's such a structured way to do it. You put the single out, you do the bit, you run through the thing. It's not too many people do the fun aspect of it like that. Especially touring all the time. Like I think it seems like you guys are road dogging it pretty hard back before the shutdown.
We were. 2019, we were out there a lot. That was kind of the most we'd ever been out.
We're like, all right, we can get used to this.
I know. And then, I'm glad we did it so much when we could, and I hope we get to do it a lot more again. So we have some tour dates scheduled for the spring and summer, and we're excited about that, but also cautiously excited because. I mean, it's fun because a lot of those like sort of ancillary things that we do, like we really do them purely to amuse, to like entertain each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really hilarious and rewarding that so many other people seem to appreciate them. But like really that's sort of like icing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing it like before anybody was really paying attention. And so it's actually been fun to like repost some of these things that we did, like our winter survival PSA we made in 2016, and like I think very few people watched it at the time, and we just reposted it when there was that big snow, and people seem to like it.
Cabin?
I know. They're like, "Are you in a cabin right now?" And they're like, "No."
This is fresh information.
I know.
Right.
Well, that's one. Hats off to keeping it going, just to keep anything going long enough to like be able to recycle stuff. You know what I mean? Like, is a big deal. Like, and it's hard, like, cause Jeff, I know you've had like a bigger band with Curie-inspired, right? That was like, it looked. I don't know how many people in the video it looked like, but it looked like 7 or something.
Yeah. 9. Ellia also had a large band. Sweet Soubrette also would have like
we were up to 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a contest. We had about
that's kind of how we got together. Is I caught Coderino at a bar one night, and felt like we were really on the same wavelength with our large bands with a single kind of creative front person.
Yeah.
And then we.
Sorry, I was gonna say and dead cats.
And
Cats,
dead cats, and that's the person super group.
Yeah, and I also did conscript you into my band.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. It was super fun being in Coderino because like I didn't have to manage it.
Yeah,
I could just show up and be
just have fun,
like a flaky musician.
Yeah.
Nice to live on the other side.
It's interesting how that happens.
It's awesome. I don't know why, but when I find myself in bands like, well, I'm just playing bass for this band, like, you know what? I don't really like where my amp's at. Can I move? I just want to make problems. But that's so okay. So from playing in your assorted projects, like, that's like in crossing the scene and playing shows together. That's where you guys met. But like going like because with Charming Disaster, it's just you two. So and like it seems like was it like this is way easier to work because of the lack there of personnel, like just because it's the two of us, we can really hustle. Like jumping from a bigger project in both ends, was it easier to downsize, or did it make more like minute things more like intense, like as far as like maybe parts of like songwriting that maybe because there was such a big group, it was overwhelming to focus on. In a smaller group, you can really hone in on that.
That wasn't an issue,
Okay.
particular, but the process was completely different with Charming Disaster than it was, at least with my band, and I'm pretty sure with your band.
like I mean, I was the sole songwriter, and I would have like I like to have a backup singer, but it was definitely a backup singer, not like a duet situation in Sweet Secret. And I mean, you're a musician, so you'll appreciate this. I had a rhythm section where the bass player was a music teacher and the drummer was like a jazz musician. So their schedules were like completely opposite.
Yeah.
Like, and like I would weep over just trying to like schedule rehearsals, and as a result, like we had all these different configurations where it's like, okay, well, only the bass player can do it but not the drummer, so like what if we make this sort of like an acoustic thing, but if there's no drummer then it doesn't make sense to have the horn section, or the horn section can do it, but you know, like they're all, so it was interesting in a way because we had a lot of like alternate arrangements of the songs, but there wasn't anything definitive. It was hard to like explain what it was and like let people know what to expect in a kind of, I mean, in a marketing way, but also just in a like aesthetic way. It was hard to know what it was. There were pros and cons to that.
But with just us two, it was like so refreshing to be able to rehearse as much as we wanted.
Which is a lot.
It turns out it's a lot. To have someone else who's got skin in the game, who cares about what you're doing as much as you do.
And like cares about all the successes as well as like the challenges as much as you do.
It makes it so much easier to have someone to share everything with, you know.
Well, and the songwriting, which is not something that like either one of us had ever really done before. Like I'm very control freaky about my creative process, and like I was never interested in anybody having any involvement in it until we started working together.
Yeah. And having, you know, we began to, since we didn't know each other that well at the time when we decided to start this band.
What were we thinking?
What were we thinking, exactly? Instead of like, and with our respective bands, it's more about like our life experience, our feelings, our kind of things, our
expressing ourselves,
expressing our deepest fears and hopes and stuff. And with this project, it was you know, in order to kind of simplify how we thought about it and how our writing process, we just came up with a bunch of like possible
like story prompts.
Yeah, stories and themes. That way it wasn't our own feelings. We could write about this couple that had killed somebody, or
definitely not us.
Definitely not.
Wink, wink.
We hadn't gone that far.
Yeah, but like we created a set of parameters to differentiate this project from our others, because we didn't like need another project for expression. It's just that we really wanted to work together, and so we needed to make it you know, specific, and then it went dark very quickly.
Yeah,
here we are.
That's amazing.
Projects.
Can I kind of pick apart? Let's like the writing process on like both your guys' ends on your own, and then where it kind of overlaps. Like because I've been doing a lot of interviews and studying a lot of songwriting on my own, and I hate to be like, oh, what was first, the music or the words, because that's never how it pans out. But like individually, I imagine like you each have your own kind of approach. Like I've been really trying to like do like okay, every other day I spend an hour writing, no expectations, right? I come up with a prompt for myself and just write for an hour. And like, if it's something, it's something. If not, it's just, I spent time doing it. And that to me has been satisfying. Cool. Just to keep that, right? Just to keep that going. But like I've never like really worked with anyone else. So I'm really interested to see like what your individual processes are and like maybe how that overlapped. Like with the prompt, that makes sense because you can kind of go study a subject or a tale, or like kind of like with the new record with the Radium girls and Marie Curie, which I want to dive into in a second. But like to take a topic like that and kind of do your own due diligence and kind of like see what aspects of a story resonate with you, and like so like as an individual on an individual level, like how do you approach like coming up just a creative practice, and then how does that pan over together? Sorry, that's a loaded.
No, that's a great question. Well, for me, kind of it's changed over the years, but like especially in Cotorino, it was definitely a music first thing, and that would inspire like what the song was about, perhaps, or like I had a musical idea, and I would develop that a little bit and try to have some words to go over it, just to have something to say and do, and develop it that way. And so it was generally music first, and then lyrics would kind of come and meet the music in some way.
Yeah.
And but then working with Charming Disaster, it hasn't been that way necessarily. And
well, for me, like where Jeff's lyric writing is more like, I would say, evocative and like imagery based, like more associative. Like I was a writer before I was a musician, so I'm very like lyrics oriented, and that's where I draw a lot of inspiration from. I write a lot of songs for books. That's part of my sort of practice, or has been over the years. There's a songwriting club called the Bushwick Book Club. And where a book gets assigned, and you have to write a song that comes out of the book. And it's such an amazing creative exercise, and it's made me such a stronger songwriter because you have something to work with that's not just your feelings, that has like, you know, a universe that's defined somewhat, but it's up to you to like craft the puzzle to then solve, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also there's a deadline and there's peer pressure. Like you have to, like you have to show up with a song at the thing. You've committed to do this. You can't drop out. You have to like show up at the event and play a song that you've written about this thing. You have friends who are doing it. Like everybody's got skin in the game. And what it really did for me was give me a lot of practice in not knowing how I was going to get from not having a song to having a song, and like a sense of faith that if I just start doing something will happen. And it kind of, and it's very low stakes. Like it's, you know, it's a great place to play an instrument that's not your home instrument or try something new. And so it encourages risk taking, and it has made me, that's not like the only thing that I use as a songwriting prompt. But it's been a really great training for me as a songwriter to say, I don't know what this song is going to be, but I know there's going to be a song. Like that sort of taking the fear out is really great. But it's very word oriented for me. Although the words carry rhythm, and rhythm carries melody, so like that happens almost at the same time for me usually. Like it's rare that I write lyrics that don't have any sort of melody or musicality attached to them.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Like I don't see how. Some people are different, you know, and like everyone I've kind of picked their brain at has never kind of been like, yeah, I write and then I put it to music. So it makes sense that it would have to be kind of like together. Do you know Don Ralph?
Yeah, I know Don Ralph.
Okay.
He's a member of the Bushwick Book Club, and yeah, he's great.
Yeah. He did the whole, what was it, the Vonnegut record? He he did a whole book, whole album on that book. I didn't realize he'd done a whole album of those. Every January, it's always a Vonnegut book, and so there've been a lot of them. Okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's very validating as a creator to go to these things and be like, wow, everybody's thing is so different. Like there's not a wrong way to go at this. Yeah. Everybody is, you know, resonates with different details and approaches it in a different way. And there's so many ways to go at it. It gives you more faith in your own approach as, you know, as being legitimate, if that's something that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, well, I imagine everyone does to some degree, whatever, especially with writing in any capacity. I feel like it's such like a self kind of driven thing, and to be able to relate and see like they're all doing their own thing and it's working out. Everyone's thing's working out in what they're gonna do. Like
I get very like warm fuzzies about it. I'm like, oh, we're all like gorgeous individual snowflakes, and no two are alike, but they're all beautiful. So coming to the part 2 of your question, like how does this kind of interact together? It's been really interesting working collaboratively, and it's evolved a lot over the last almost 10 years now. Can you believe it? 10. 10, I know, crazy. So when we started writing together, it was more like a pen pal style, relay race style songwriting, where one of us would start something and then hand it to the other one to write the next bit, which was very exciting. Like, there's nothing more exciting than getting an email with a voice memo in it that's like the next part of the.
I know, it's so exciting. Yeah, and we worked that way. The entire first album, most of it is like epistolary kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as we got more comfortable with each other, and it's really about like it's about like trusting the other person and being vulnerable and like
not being too attached.
And not being too attached. That's the other thing. You like kind of, you know, you present what you have, but you're not attached to it, but you also like not to, you know,
like you have opinions,
ashamed of yourself.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, you're not like, well, this is stupid or whatever. You know, you have to be vulnerable and you have to kind of let things go. And that, you know, that can only come with time after working together as long as we have. And it developed. And like the second album, you know, sometimes
even before the second album though. So here's a concrete example. Osiris, which is one of the songs on the first album. Yeah. I remember this because we were like on an airplane from somewhere, and I was like, oh, I have this like little song idea, but like I don't even know if it's a thing. It's just, and that's like something we say a lot. It's like I don't know if this is a thing. Like, is this a thing? And I was just, it was just like a riff. It was like and it was very like PJ Harvey drums in my head, like, you know, like Mick Harvey, Rid of Me style. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, like this, it's just like, it's not even a thing. And Jeff was like, oh yeah, like I could totally do that. Like we can like make that.
We can do that.
Yeah. Like I can make that sound on my guitar. Like we can make that. And the other idea was that it should be a song about Isis and Osiris. And when we landed in San Francisco, so when we were going to San Francisco,
we went to the bookstore
immediately. Got a book of it was
Egyptian mythology.
Budge's ancient Egyptian mythology. You know, and he's like, you know, 1920s guy, so a lot of his stuff is like a little suspect at this point, but it's so perfect for like research and getting like ideas. And then we each went into that mythology and pulled out stuff, and we built that song.
That's right.
Yeah. So having somebody else to be like, oh yeah, your idea is a thing. Like we can make that we can like flesh that out. Like there are definitely song ideas that would never have gotten fleshed out if not for our working together. Yeah. You know, because I would be like, oh, this, I think there are many where I would have been like, this is just a notion. It's not like a song.
Yeah. Same here.
Right. Well, okay. That's really fascinating because like, it seems like, Ellie, you're coming from like did you do slam poetry on a side note? Was that a thing?
I absolutely did. Okay. That was my introduction to performing. That was me. If you were at Corpo's Cafe in 1997 or 98 on the Lower East Side in the West Village of New York City, my senior year of high school into college, like that was my jam. I would show up and I would like yell poetry at people, and I was good at it, but it's not particularly enjoyable, I think, to like be on the receiving end in some ways. Yeah. But music is great because you can like you can
trick them into listening.
People like listening to music.
Yeah.
Well, it's slam poetry is interesting because like to witness it kind of like, you know, like it's not like music where you can hear like a whole set, you know what I mean? Like I feel like one poem is like a lot to take in. And like I like slam poetry. Like Saul Williams is one of my favorite writers in general. Just like his work is awesome. But like it's a different. So like it seems like you kind of had more of a foot in like the kind of lyric, the writing game. Where Jeff, it sounds like you were more had the aspect of guitar playing, the more musicality under your fingers. And it seems like the kind of like the blend the two and both be writers and to be able to vibe on an idea, hear like a melodic thing and be able to bring it out full-wise instrumentally, musically bring that to life is like to know that someone else can make that happen. Because I feel like as a writer in any sense of the creative endeavor, you kind of get lost in like, well, I have this idea. I don't want to bring it up because it's going to waste their time. But if I can make it happen, maybe they'll find it intriguing. So like, you know what I mean? I personally, I find myself like, I'll learn how to play the banjo so I can show you this part. You know what I mean? Like, we're like, no, I have two friends that rip banjo. Let me just pitch them the song and see if they can do it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it comes back to trust. But the other thing that's happened though is that I think like I've definitely become more attuned to writing music first, and I think vice versa.
And vice versa for me.
Yeah.
And that
so like we've started to like write more like each other in some way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was pretty. I'd say like it happened relatively quickly. Where
it's like sorry, go ahead.
No, where we, like there's no real differentiation between like, oh, Ellia's like the writer or like she she's focuses on the lyrics more than I do, or she's, we have our things that we do and that we like and our comforts, but Ellia's come up with amazing musical parts that I never would have come up with. And, I feel more comfortable starting with, lyrical ideas.
Lyrical ideas are really, I mean, like, honestly, one of the first things I noticed when I first saw Coderino was like, you had this line of lyrics that I just loved. So,
what was it?
It was, it was either better than this or the song that I call Two Shoes, which is actually called Broken Carousel. Yeah. So there's what is the line about the years and the
7 days?
7 days in a week.
12 months in a year.
Yeah, do the line.
Like a bead on
beads on the string
that are weighing
down. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. 7 days in a week, 12 months in a year, like beads on a string. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that one, and there's also the other one. What is it? Two shoes, two shirts, two socks.
I can't remember.
And too sad to mention.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, that's a cool play on words. That's awesome. That's too sad to mention. Nice. That's beautiful. But
and I can relate to this guy. I'm gonna go talk to him.
So what brought up the dead cats then?
Well, the cats expired.
No.
My cat died like a year before meeting Ellia, and then.
Well, this was when you came. So I'd seen Coderino play, and I knew that like we were simpatico, and like we should do something together. And Jeff was open to it, but he hadn't seen me yet, and so he came out to see a Sweet Sweet Bread show.
Yeah.
And I guess you came to Jesus at that time. And so after that show, the two of us sat down at the bar and just started like talking. And I don't know how the conversation got around to dead cats, but it
does sometimes.
Well, and for like my parents' cat, like my childhood cat had recently passed, and there was this sort of hilarious story involving like, my mom, like the guy cutting the lawn was like, lady, there's a dead cat in the yard, and it was a cat. But she wasn't sure if it was dead. She was like, oh, she was still warm, so I took her to the vet. And then, like, cue like Monty Python dead parrot sketch, and then she's like relating all this to me on the phone, and she's like, and then like they asked if I wanted to cremate the cat. Like, do you know how much it costs to cremate a cat? Like, and
it just gets.
So she's like, so I just took the cat back home with me, and then your dad came home. My dad had never really cared for the cat, and my dad was like she's like, your father suggested that maybe we should just put it in a garbage bag and put it out for the trash pickup. and she was like, but I told him, like, we couldn't tell you kids that, like, we'd done that. And I was like, also, I think that's illegal. And then, the lawn guys came back the next day, and so she had them dig a hole, and they buried the cat in the yard. So just that, it was that kind of story. And Jeff's
my
story,
cat had recently died, and I live near a vet, and our cat was never a very pleasant cat.
Oh.
You know, I loved it very much, but it just didn't like people very much. But I felt very close to it. And, you know, we went to the vet down the block, and the vet, you know, we had to put her down. We put her down, and the vet was like, "Oh, you want to have a minute with the cat, you know, after the fact." So he was a really mean vet, but like he was really great in this capacity as like in this very tender moment. So he gave me a moment with the cat, and the cat had never looked so calm and sweet, and like it would never let me like pet it in the way I was petting it. I was like, this is so strange. This is not my cat. This is poor thing.
Anyway, we bonded over, but I think it was the fact that we both recognized that these stories were very funny in their darkness, that it was like another indicator, another indication that like we were on a very rare shared wavelength.
That's right. And the next day we got together and we had
our first meeting.
Both charming disasters. Like, it's a charming situation when you can see the humor in it, but it's pretty disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of been like the thread that's run through all of our work is like we deal with dark material in a lighthearted way. And, you know, which is not to say that we're not like cognizant of the darkness, like the reality of it, but also we see the absurdity in it, and then we get a lot of mileage out of that.
So okay, with the writing, like, now one thing I'm really fascinated is with how your vocals lined up together. Like, when did you, like, as far as just vibing and being like, oh, I can write with this person, like your vocals together really bring each other out. Like, because I dove into most of the discography of what I could find on what you guys have separate and then together, but there's something when your vocals interlock together that really bring out like each other. And I don't know if that is a, representing the writing aspect of it too, like, and that just is like a kind of unconscious like amplification of that. But like your voices really lock in together, and knowing how hard it is to learn and get harmonies right. Like, I can't imagine a third person in the band, because that would be that they would lose their mind just trying to get that together. But like in the good way, because they're so interlocked. And like, was there like a song that one of you wrote that the other, like, I can hear where I fall into it or bring that out, or was this like a group effort where like, oh, you should be a fourth here, or like I'm really fascinated on how that, or was it just singing together? You found the place where your voices fall in with each other.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it happened pretty organically. I love harmonizing, and I have a really good ear for it. Like, I just have a good like instinct for where the intervals are going to feel good. So when I'm writing vocal harmonies, it's usually just by ear and not by math. And we did a lot of harmonies in Sweet Soubrette also. But like with us, I don't know.
We were practicing a lot, and we were like playing, like we didn't have a lot of songs to play, so we would play them over and over and really work.
And we were playing each other's songs a lot at first too.
That's true.
Yeah, and Coderino had lead harmonies that, although it's funny because what you said about it being harder with more people. At the time, Coderino had two other singers who were not active at that time, and so I came in and was doing all the harmonies. And with two people, you can go all over the place, right? Like, you don't have to be like locked in parallel the whole time.
Right.
You can like swap out who's going high, who's going low. You could switch from fourth to a third or a fifth or a seventh or whatever. Like, you can really shape it in interesting ways. And when you have more people, suddenly you're stepping on each other's parts, and it gets very fraught when they come back from being on hiatus, and
Yeah.
suddenly like the parts are different, and
Yeah.
you have to like, you know, go back
Relearn
to
it. Rearrange it.
but we just sang a lot together, and I think our voices do just complement, but also like when we're doing a new song, we often have like a spreadsheet, like we want to like if we want to like try out, like test out different harmonies, we will like make a grid, and we'll be like, okay, like what if like, all right, if I do the G and then I do the B and then I do the E, like what can you do? Well, if I'm on the G, you could be on the B or the E, but like, oh, it sounds weird if you're on the low one. Can you go up an octave? No. All right, let's try swapping. Like we try out like a lot of iterations.
And there's, alluded to before, just because there's so much freedom in having two vocalists, that we can do interesting things. We don't have to worry about a third person and like what another, prospective person would do. And there's a really cool interview or article about the
Counterpoint
and about the brothers, the Everly brothers. They're talking about how they could like jump around and like switch who's doing high, switch who's doing low, and in such a like creative way that it was more creative, more expressive than if there were three-part harmony. And I feel like we really get to do that because, it's just us two, and we're doing as much as we can. And like, besides like a performative thing, like we're like, all right, I'm playing guitar, you're playing uke, we're doing foot percussion, and like, what is the most interesting thing that we could do with our two voices?
Yeah.
And we kind of explore those things.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes when we're writing a new song, we're like, oh yeah, we've checked all of the Charming Disaster boxes. Like, here we're like taking turns, and then this one we're singing it at the same time on harmony, and now like you're gonna sing your part and I'll sing my part, but like it's at the same time, so we have this like counterpoint thing going. I mean, like Sympathetic Magic is a good example, or Wishing Well is a good example, where we have different lines that we say at different times, and we say them all,
bring them together,
all on top of each other.
Yeah,
and it's so exciting. I mean, and that was really one of our goals at the very outset, was to write songs with two voices that were both narrative voices and also musical voices, that we could do all these interesting, fun things when there's two people singing. Like, it's so much fun.
Yeah, we were just working on this thing. It's not released yet anywhere, but one, like, we're singing a pattern in 6, and then the other person's singing the pattern in 5.
What,
Haunted Lighthouse.
Oh yeah.
So
it goes around.
Does this cool Steve Reich kind of thing, and then it comes together at a certain point, and that's really fun.
That sounds awesome. I'm actually really happy to hear that there's a graph. There's like there's hustling, like there's the natural feel to it, but we really work to get this out. That makes me feel really happy.
Excel involved.
Yeah, or just like a very messy looking hand scroll. Like, I've got so many notebooks that have like a grid drawn in them, and like in sort of like wavy lines where it's like, okay, like,
there's a matrix.
There's always a matrix.
It's amazing. I mean, it's clearly paid off, and you guys, like, to kind of bounce it to the My Lady Radium, Our Lady Radium, to bounce it to the new record. Like, there's a lot of that in there, and a lot of it adds to the narrative. And to kind of focus on that for a little bit, one thing, like, I listened to all the records you guys had, then I listened to the new one, and then I read the advance sheet from Howard, and I'm like, oh, I need to do some research. So I went back and did a bunch of research on Marie Curie and like the Radium Girls, and then went back and listened to it a few more times, and the kind of touch upon the storytelling, like from the Bushwick Club and the work with working on that type of exercise. I think you guys did an amazing job of highlighting like some of the key emotional elements in that tale, and kind of spanning from Marie to the Radium Girls, like this kind of like tragic like twist of what an amazing thing it is that this person discovered this radioactivity, and like became this first woman to receive 2 Nobel Prizes, in this heroic character, and like the kind of tragic twist in her life, and how the radium itself led to some more tragedy down the line. like there's like this beautiful like kind of juxtaposition of that within all this, but musically how you guys use the vocal techniques you just described, which graphed out or not or felt in this case is amazing. What kind of brought this to like why Marie Curie? Like, I mean, it's I think I kind of know, but like like was it an exercise and this really just kind of stuck with you? Like I really got a lot of songs with this, or like was it just being that inspired by her story?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for all those nice things that you just said. It really means a lot to us. We knew for a while that we wanted to try writing a group of songs that told a story together, because we had for quite some time been writing songs where each one was kind of its own universe, told a kind of self-contained story with its own characters, its own, dramatic arc. And we wanted to try writing more like a rock opera, I guess. And we were looking for an existing story to tell that we could approach in that way, using some of the tools that, like from the Bushwick Book Club style of like research-based or like reading-based songwriting. Jeff, you, okay,
Yeah,
you had a look on your face.
No, it's just my face.
And so we hunted around for a story that appealed to us, that seemed to have a lot of like material for us to work with. And there's this wonderful graphic novel by Lauren Redness called Radioactive, which is about Marie and Pierre Curie and their love story and sort of repercussions of their research. And it's this gorgeous kind of non-linear storytelling approach. It's visually very beautiful. And there's so many just like fascinating details, like duels were fought over the scandal when Marie, after Pierre's death, got involved with a colleague who was married, and the xenophobia and misogyny of, early 20th century France came to a head, and there were death threats on her life, and not to mention like the love story between Marie and Pierre, and then his tragic death, and like the exciting discoveries that they made, and then the tragic consequences. Like there's just so much to work with.
The spiritual medium that they attended spiritual sessions from Eusapia Palladrino, this kind of strange, very famous spirit medium that was happening a lot at that time and trying to be studied because all these new phenomena were being discovered. And they thought, maybe there's something to this ectoplasm and spiritualism that, like, maybe this is some
maybe they are speaking to the dead.
Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's a thing.
So her story, like, it touched on so many things that interested us beyond, like, there's like the sort of heroic female protagonist, which is interesting, and there's but there's also all there's the scientific discovery, but there's also a lot of stuff in the story that relates to things that we've already explored in our songs, things like ancient mythology, like she was compared to Pandora, she was compared to Prometheus, like bringing fire to the world. Like that's an ancient tale of like someone's curiosity leading to the world as we know it, for good or ill. And all these sort of poetic resonances.
That we could really sink our teeth into.
It was such a rich vein to mine. So we set out deliberately to write a bunch of songs that came out of this. We had an artist residency in early 2017.
Early 2017.
And we went out to Michigan with like a stack of books, everything from a couple biographies of Marie Curie that are contemporary to a book about Marie by her daughter Eve, a book about Pierre by Marie herself, the graphic novel, a book, a kind of scientific book about radium itself. And we read and we took notes, and then we kind of we looked at what our notes told us about what themes had spoken to us, and then the actual songwriting began.
The first week was like heavy research and note taking, and then the second week it was pretty much a song a day.
Pretty much, we would each take a stack of index cards, which we had like sorted through and made into like piles, and we would each repair to one part of the cabin to like work separately, and then we would break for lunch and do a little show and tell, and Jeff would be like, I don't know if this is anything, but like here's
that's basically what it was like.
And I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if this is anything, but like this is what I got. And then because like by then our collaborative songwriting had evolved to the point where we were no longer just doing like pen pal style. We would then sit with each one and be in it together, working at it.
So it was a lot of side by side.
A lot of side by side staring at a laptop screen and like
pulling out the matrix.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's like one because so much of that, it's interesting because a lot, like how you said, a lot is in that story, right? There's scientific discovery, there's mysticism within it, there's the heroic female protagonist. There's a lot of stuff that could be just one of those aspects could be an entire album in like, you know, aside from like in a completely different set of characters, you know. And like after like, cause like I read it and I'm like, I gotta do some research, you know, to listen to it. And like the one, and like so much of what I like did a quick research, a quick breeze through it compared to like what you guys just described. You hit on the head. Like there was one line, I think I watched a video or something or read an article where it described her looking at when they had that shed where they what was it, pitch or yeah, like which RA sounds musical, you know what I mean? Like they looking around the lab and just seeing like the blue light glowing, and like I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, what a kind of like, I mean, though tragic, what like a kind of magical life Marie would have had coming from like a place where she could not be allowed, where she was not allowed to learn, to being like a lead scientist in like, and then hanging out in this lab where there's this magic glow, you know what I mean? Like, what a cool, unique kind of like life that like in that moment that like kind of, you know, you found your love and you're like, you're doing this important work and like, and it's just glowing around here. Like, and you guys hit that, you put the pixie glow within a couple songs, I believe. And like, but so like when you're digging through stuff, and as a kind of a side question, like, what, like, are you taking like kind of a key phrase that like, oh, that's a song seed, that's a lyric, or like a key emotional factor, like the emotional, like it's really interesting that she wrote a book on Pierre. That sounds like a heartbreaking, but really like deep cut into that.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Like she just, Pierre sounds like such a unique soul also.
Yeah, such a sweet individual.
You know, he like put away his own research to assist Marie in her research to like work, not like, I mean, they worked together as equals, but like he put aside his own, you know, it takes a special kind of person to do that.
Yeah.
We're like crows. We're like looking for the shiny things. So like, and I think the key thing, and this is like a Bushwick Book Club kind of skill, is to not think too hard about it. Like there just as there's like writing and editing, there's like looking for the shiny things and writing. And so when you're looking for the shiny things, it's just like what sticks out, like write it down, come back to it later.
Yeah, we took a lot of quotes from the various sources, and those wound up in lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, seed of a song, even, you know, like the start of a song was maybe, you know, a phrase or a quote that we pulled.
Yeah, there's Marie corresponded with a mathematician named Hertha Ayrton, she was English, and there's a wonderful quote from Hertha Ayrton where she describes the laboratory as a refuge against evil. And like that was such a beautiful idea and such a beautiful turn of phrase that we put that into the song Elemental. But just like the idea of the work as this safety.
Yeah.
But yeah, we collect all the stuff and then we kind of see what we've got. That's how we did it for this project at any rate.
That's cool. That sounds like just so. Is that kind of like so the Bushwick technique in a way is kind of finding the nuggets that you can emotionally expand upon?
Yeah, or that just are like a neat turn of phrase. And I should say, like, that's certainly not how everybody works. You know, that's just how I like to work. And it sort of lends itself to this kind of project where there's a lot of material and you don't quite know what to do with it. And so you kind of just go through it. And so we had like 100 index cards. And so as we were reading, if we saw something that jumped out, we would write it on an index card. And then afterwards we went through the index cards and grouped them.
That's cool. That's really cool. Because like you get like 2 verses in a normal song that tells three verses to tell the story. You know what I mean? Emotionally, you got to set it up in one verse. Like that's really cool. Wow. And like and the kind of bounce it to the Radium Girls, the track where you guys had the like I want to say claymation, the puppet video. Oh yeah. I also noticed that was used in another video. What was it? The one about quarantine. What? I'm blanking on the name of the song right now. For your solos. God, it's gonna. But either way, like that song in particular was so beautifully done and set up that scenario because there's so much on like how corrupt and like just incredibly fried that like whole situation was when they brought it to light, and like the kind of focus in on it and like just like the emotional context of doing the thing and being in this room and like how kind of prestige it was and like to have a job like that and like I remember an account, I can't remember what the girl's name was, Mary, who worked there, or I can't remember, too many names, but like how she toured the factory and like it was a dream come true because like it was achievable work and like a good wage and like
clean, sociable, and like and like so like there's this like element of betrayal to it. Like it wasn't like a shitty job that like killed them. It was like a nice job that killed them, which somehow makes it worse in a way, I guess. You know, that it was set up to be something special and then it ended up being so deadly. That song was actually the first one that we wrote of the
that's right.
Because that story in particular stood out to us so much.
Yeah.
Well, and it kind of stands out as its own in a way compared to the, you know what I mean? Because it's an aftermath. It's like the sequel to the story of Radium's like allure. But yeah, wow, okay. Because that one like he said that. Speaking of setting up everything in a first verse, you know what I mean? Like you're in it. And the video, I don't know who does the claymation or the puppeteering for you guys, but they do a fantastic job.
That's an artist named Omer Gal, who has a band called Cookie Tongue. He's also a musician, and I think part of his sensibility is a musician's sensibility for timing. And we really just like we handed it to him. We were familiar with his other work and his aesthetic, and we just like we knew that he could take it. Right. Yeah. And so we had a sort of mind meld with him where we gave him a sort of download of the Radium Girls story and some of the details that especially stood out to us, like the fact that they were exhaling radon gas. Like radon is one of the daughter products of radium when it decays, and there was so much radium lodged in their bones that they were actually breathing out radon gas, which is just nuts.
Yeah, which could expose photographic plates, so they could breathe on a photographic plate and expose it,
which is insane. Yeah. So there are a lot of images that especially stood out to us in that song, in that story, and we shared those with Omer, and then he came up with this incredible work, which I have to say, the first time I saw that he shared the video with us, I was like, holy crap, this song is fine, but like this video is real art.
It's true. It's so impressive. We were so excited and happy. We were so happy about it, how it came out. And he did, he just went and ran with it.
Oh yeah. He got very into the story and into the tragedy, and the puppet is based on one of the a specific Radium girl. He said he did his own research too, and when he built the puppet, the armature for it, he then took it to a fabric shop and had the puppet like help pick out the fabric, and then he sewed all of her clothes. And I mean, it was like like down to the tiniest detail. Everything in that video is handmade by Omar. It's such an incredible thing he did.
Yeah.
Typhoid Mary. That was the one I was thinking of.
Oh
Right?
yeah. Typhoid Mary, that's the Sweet Soubrette tune. That's a more recent one, really a solo release. The band wasn't on that. That actually was a found piece of stop motion.
Oh, okay.
By an artist named Lee Harper, who does these miniatures, which are incredible, that are these sort of macabre historical miniatures. And when I saw that she had created a little stop motion of her Typhoid Mary one, I asked if I could use it in a video, and she said yes.
It struck similar. But yeah, that definitely Omar definitely like brought it to the next level, because that video, like that song itself, is really emotional. Like you're put into it, but the visual amplifies it even more.
Yes.
Very cool project.
Would you like to hear a couple of small secrets about that song and the video?
Yeah. Small secret number one.
When we were recording the tracks for that album, there was a clock in the room. We were at my parents' house, and the clock was very loud, and so we had to move it. But when we were doing Radium Girls, we decided that we would use the clock. So we brought it back into the room, and we recorded the clock as one of the tracks. And because we knew we were going to record the clock, we made sure to record the track at 120 beats per minute, so that clock.
Even though the song is in 3 and it's 120 beats per minute, so the clock kind of gives like a hemiola to get over it. It's pretty cool.
That's super cool. Because a lot of this was all recorded on your own, right? Like this was all in your house or your parents' house, right?
The whole album was recorded with just the two of us playing all the instruments in my parents' empty house during the pandemic.
Yeah. And the clock.
The clock played itself, I guess. Yeah. And then we mixed it with our longtime recording engineer, Don Godwin, who's based at a place called Tonal Park in Maryland. And we mixed it remotely with him. So everything got like shined up and cleaned up. But we did all the tracking ourselves.
That's a big deal. It's hard to, it's hard to, the hardest part is just that, getting everything on the wax. Like mixing it is hard too, but and we only had 2 microphones.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time. There was
a lot of experimental drum miking set up.
I know. Sure. The drums were really fun.
Damn. That's super cool. Like, that's awesome. Like, well, because the record is spacious. It has like, it doesn't sound limited. It doesn't sound like there was a limit on like, it doesn't sound confined in a way. And like, I think part of it is like the delivery, the songs, and the performance delivery. Well, that's all of it. That's recording music. I answer my own rambling, but there's a part of it, like the music you wrote, but somehow when you guys captured it, it's got a vastness to it, but also like, and it's confined in a way where it's like it's not like, it doesn't sound like you're in a cave or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't sound overkill. But that's amazing that you guys did that all with 2 mics. That's incredible.
They're nice mics. I'm glad we got those.
Yeah. They're great mics.
We got those toward the beginning of the we put in our order for those toward the beginning of the pandemic, when it became clear that the recording session we had planned at a studio later in the mid 2020 was not going to pan out. And so we got a couple of mics so that we could keep on recording but it was very experimental. Also, we were like actively fighting a war with the leaf blowers outside. We were in the suburbs, and we're like, all right, like we're ready to record. And then like, oh my God. We worked a lot at night.
such as the creative way, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys find that you write more creative at night? Is that like, do you?
Oh,
yeah.
Definitely. takes me like all day to get going, and then by the time it's
Yeah.
nighttime, I'm like really humming along.
That's right. That's when the coffee's kicked in.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just like I've taken enough in, you know what I mean? Like at that point at night, like I've taken enough day in that I can kind of think more creatively, or maybe this has more than a meeting. Maybe it's more than a leaf blower. Like what's, you know what I mean? Like fill in the blank, whatever it is. I feel like after a certain hour of being conscious, being awake, like I'm like, deeper thought. So you got this crazy like new tune in the works. Do you have a new record in the works? Like I know you guys mentioned some tour dates. Let's kind of plug what's coming in next to kind of wrap it up here.
Sure. We've got an album release show on March 10th in New York City at a place called Caveat, where we will play all the songs from Our Lady of Radium. And that show is also going to be live streamed. So there's tickets available to the live stream as well for all of our fans who are not able to be in New York City. And then we're going to do a little Pacific Northwest tour starting March 24th in Seattle, going to Portland, Cottage Grove, Oregon, Chico, California, Berkeley, Pismo Beach, and LA. So that's all between March 24th and April 2nd. And we've got some stuff coming up over the summer too, but I feel like that's too far out and too many things could happen to plug.
Right,
But we'll be announcing some more stuff soon. And then
and this is all to tour behind the Our Lady of Radium,
which releases on March 4th.
Yeah, which comes out on the 4th.
We are also working on other recordings. We are actually about to do final mixes on the next album, which we have somehow managed to get in the can. I don't know how that happened.
I don't know.
I mean, we started working on that last summer, though.
Yeah.
What can you kind of get into, like what the concept is? It a concept? Is there like a kind of like with Our Lady Radium? Is there a narrative through it, or is it like, I'm sure there is, but like, is it kind of?
It's more like a menagerie of.
It's like a classic Charming Disaster album with songs about witches and animals and
monsters.
It's like a curiosity cabinet.
It's a curiosity. Yeah. That's it.
Very cool. One more question that I should have asked earlier. Funk Rust. Do those guys? Does that personnel, was that kind of the guys you were trying to book times for but couldn't book times for, and do they cross over with Curie-inspired and like and Charming Disaster?
So the personnel that we try to get on recordings for Charming Disaster is typically our old bandmates from Coderino and Sweet Sue Bread.
Okay.
Funk Rust Brass Band is another active project. My husband and I are the kind of I don't really take any band leader credit on that show. I'm the front person of that project, and my husband is the band leader. But there are a lot of amazing horn players, so it's not out of the question that we might try to recruit some of them at some point for a recording. But Funk Rust, it's also a collaborative songwriting project, but like super different, and has some gigs coming up once the weather gets nice.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you taking time and being flexible.
Oh,
Thank you,
it was
Dave.
really nice talking to you, Dave. And I hope we get to meet next time we come through Cleveland.
Likewise.